Please,
Madam Chair, this is really unbecoming of a member to badger any witness. This is really, truly unacceptable.
Continue, Mr. Poilievre.
Unbecoming of a member. Truly unacceptable. Those words were not spoken by a political opponent. They were spoken by a parliamentary committee chair, the person in the room whose entire job is procedural neutrality. After watching Pierre Poilievre spend several minutes repeatedly interrupting, talking over, and personally attacking a witness who had no official political power whatsoever. That witness was Mark Carney. 5 years ago, long before Carney entered politics, long before any election, long before anyone in that room could have imagined that the man being badgered would one day become Prime Minister of Canada, and that the man doing the badgering would lose to him in a national election by a clear majority. Your generation has sat in enough meetings and attended enough hearings to know exactly what the chair's intervention meant. It meant Poilievre had crossed a line that even parliamentary procedure could not ignore. And what Carney did in response tells you everything you need to know about the difference between these two men. Subscribe to Canada Point right now because this 5-year-old clip reveals something about character that every Canadian deserves to see again with fresh eyes. Let us be precise about what was actually happening in that parliamentary committee 5 years ago. Mark Carney was appearing as a witness, not as a politician, not as a candidate, as an expert advisor, a private citizen with relevant expertise being asked to contribute to a committee's understanding of energy policy and economic transition. Poilievre asked him whether he supported the government's decision to veto the Northern Gateway pipeline. Carney answered honestly. He said he thought it was the right decision given both environmental and commercial reasons. And then instead of engaging with that answer, Poilievre pivoted immediately to an attack. He raised the fact that Brookfield Asset Management, the company Carney was then associated with, had invested in pipelines in Brazil and the UAE. His argument was simple and aggressive. You support foreign pipelines but oppose Canadian ones. That is hypocrisy. That is the Davos elite at its worst. And every time Carney tried to explain the more complex reality, that a global energy transition requires different approaches in different jurisdictions, Poilievre talked over him, interrupted him, refused to let him finish a sentence. That is not a policy debate. That is a performance designed to dominate rather than to understand.
Do you support the Prime Minister's decision to veto the Northern Gateway pipeline, Mr. Carney?
I understand the veto of the Northern Gateway pipeline.
You support it?
Given both environmental and commercial reasons.
Do you support it?
I think it was sensible. I wasn't involved in the decision, but I think it was the right decision.
And yet your company has invested billions of dollars in oil companies in both Brazil and the UAE to buy pipelines. You bought billions of dollars of pipelines as a company in the last 5 years. Do you support those investments?
Mr. Poilievre, there is a global energy system, and one of the issues, I'm trying to explain a bit of how the economy works. One of the
Thank
issues,
you so much.
It may help. One of the issues for this committee in thinking about a sustainable transition.
Do you support it?
Where is Canada's role in those as energy transitions from fossil fuels to renewables, and in different jurisdictions? Into different geography, it matters. It matters,
Okay.
and this is a fundamental point.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. This is a fundamental. You're finally getting to a point.
You've exceeded
that
the
is
time.
relevant to this committee's inquiry.
What you're saying is you oppose pipelines in Canada, but you support them in the UAE and in Brazil. That's what you've actually said.
There are specific.
That's your double standard.
It is not a double standard.
It is a double standard.
No, it's not.
You make billions of dollars off foreign pipelines, and you shut them down here at home, putting our people out of work.
That you are a representative of the Canadian people, and one of your responsibilities, including at this committee,
is to fight for Canadian jobs, and not foreign jobs like you.
Exactly, to fight for Canadian jobs, and the types of Canadian jobs that are durable and are going to move forward.
Right.
I grew up in Alberta. I know the innovative, nature of that.
Well,
energy
go try to
industry.
give that answer back in Alberta, because I grew up there
I have
too, and I
many
can tell you
friends-
the
I-
people.
yeah.
I can tell you the people
I
of
can tell you-
Alberta
I tell
would
you
be
what, that-
ashamed with the answer you just gave. That you would give
That's not- no,
billions of
because-
dollars,
no,
billions of dollars
Mr.
to foreign
Mr.
pipelines,
Poilievre?
you need
while
to-
not allowing Canadians to build pipelines
So,
here at home. That is
there
the kind
are-
of
there are
elite
pipe-
Davos hypocrisy.
Could I please
Madam
speak?
Chair, this is really unbecoming of a member to badger any witness. This is really, truly unacceptable.
Continue, Mr. Poilievre.
Now let us separate what actually happened in that exchange from the performance Poilievre was staging. Carney's actual argument, which Poilievre allowed him to complete, was this. A global energy system requires different infrastructure in different places. Canada's role in the energy transition is not simply to build or not build any specific pipeline. It is to position Canadian expertise, fossil fuels, carbon capture, blue hydrogen, Alberta's ingenuity, for the long-term future of a changing global market. That is a coherent position. It is a position that required more than 30 seconds to explain properly. And every time Carney tried to get to the substance of it, Poilievre interrupted again. Poilievre's actual technique was not debate. It was a rhetorical trap designed to produce a clip. Ask a binary question. Refuse the nuanced answer. Repeat the accusation louder. Talk over the response. Call it hypocrisy. Add a label, Davos elite, that signals to a specific audience who the villain is. Your generation has seen this technique before. Not in parliamentary committees necessarily, but in boardrooms, in union negotiations, in community meetings, wherever someone decides that winning the moment matters more than understanding the issue. The chair recognized it immediately for what it was. Unbecoming. Truly unacceptable. And then Poilievre continued anyway. Even after the chair's rebuke, he came back with a longer version of the same accusation, that Carney supported killing a Western Canadian pipeline that ships the most ethical oil in the world while profiting from foreign fossil fuel investments. That it clearly was not about the environment, because if it were, Carney would oppose fossil fuels everywhere. Davos elite at its worst. And Carney responded, calmly, without raising his voice, without matching the personal tone, without retaliating in kind. He said he absolutely supports Canadian jobs today and tomorrow. That an energy transition requires Canadian fossil fuel expertise, carbon capture blue hydrogen, particularly in Alberta. That Brookfield was invested heavily in Canadian energy infrastructure. That the future of durable Canadian jobs requires looking at the complete picture, not isolated talking points. He finished every sentence he was allowed to finish with the same measured tone he started with. For your generation, that quality, the ability to remain substantive and calm under sustained personal attack with no official power to protect you, is not a small thing. You have seen what it costs to maintain that composure when someone is deliberately trying to rattle you, and you know what it reveals about a person when they can do it.
First thing, absolute. I support Canadian jobs, and I support Canadian jobs today and tomorrow. And in order to have those jobs tomorrow, what we need and what this committee can contribute is an energy transition. The Canadian fossil fuels, Canadian companies will play an essential role. Brookfield itself is heavily invested in Canada, including in energy infrastructure for fossil fuels, but it's also, and we connect collectively as Canadians, and we look to our parliament to support this, need to be putting in place the energies and industries of the future. That means carbon capture and storage. That means blue hydrogen, and both of which are absolutely essential for Canadian jobs in my home province of Alberta, and that's where the future lies. Now, we need to have the overall picture, which is why, and I'll finish with this, Chair, I emphasize the clear pathways, walking back from that, not jumping on specifics, and not seeing the bigger picture, nor providing the support that Canadians deserve.
5 years have now passed since that committee hearing. The man being interrupted and personally labeled as Davos elite is now Prime Minister of Canada. He is currently on his 10th visit to Alberta, working alongside Premier Danielle Smith on pipelines, housing, and energy infrastructure. He announced a new West Coast oil pipeline agreement. He signed a $510 million housing infrastructure fund for Alberta. He is building toward $200 billion in Alberta investment and 175,000 jobs. The man who was doing the interrupting ran against him in a national election and lost by a clear majority. That is the full circle your generation deserves to see clearly. The performance in that committee room, the dominance, the accusation, the labels, the refusal to let a witness speak, was rewarded with exactly what performances usually earn: attention in the moment and defeat in the long run. Carney's restraint in that room aged better than everything directed at him. The carbon capture and blue hydrogen he mentioned as the future of Alberta jobs are now central to the agreements he is signing with Premier Smith. The global energy transition framework he tried to explain while being talked over is now Canadian federal policy. Not because he won the argument in that committee room. He never got the chance to finish it. But because he was right about where Canada needed to go, and he stayed steady enough under pressure to still be standing when the country made its choice. Your generation has lived through enough to know something important about character under pressure. It is not revealed in how someone behaves when they have all the power in the room, when they are protected by title and position and majority, when there are no consequences for rudeness. It is revealed in how someone behaves when they have none of those things, when they are a witness, not a politician, when someone with institutional authority is using that authority to badger and belittle and talk over them, when the person attacking has the camera and the microphone and the procedural control. In that committee room 5 years ago, Pierre Poilievre had all of those advantages. And Mark Carney did not match his energy, did not raise his voice, did not descend to personal labels or accusations, kept returning to the substance: Alberta jobs, carbon capture, blue hydrogen, the future of Canadian energy, with the same composure he had when the first question was asked. The chair intervened because the behavior was unbecoming. The voters intervened because the temperament was disqualifying. And Canada now has a prime minister whose response to sustained personal attack in a room where he had no power was to stay calm, keep talking about substance, and let the longer contest decide the outcome. That is not weakness. That is the most durable kind of strength your generation knows. Subscribe to Canada Point for honest analysis of the leaders and moments shaping Canada's story. Turn on notifications, and we will see you in the next one.